Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation. I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Addict new release roundup. If you're new here, welcome. What we do is we go back and forth and we talk about the latest home video releases. Some are good, some are bad. But you know what? We always have a really good time talking about them and sharing them with you. So I am going to kick this party off with a title that I had not heard of, despite having Nick Nolte in it.
Hmm.
Um, that is North Dallas 40, the Kino Studio Classics 4K release. And no interior or anything, just the discs. And as we always say, if you want this slipcover, if you're like completist, you want to get it sooner rather than later. So I don't usually like sports movies. I guess I'll just preface it that. Um,
They're so good.
I don't know. I mean, there are good ones for sure. But I think this one's kind of interesting because it takes sort of a look behind like what it means to be like a professional football player. It kind of shows you a little bit of the behind the scenes locker room stuff. I mean, you see a little bit of like football, but that's not really the point of this movie. It's like it's more about how the managers will manipulate you. They'll like dope you up to keep you going. You're just a machine basically in this sort of bigger mechanism, I guess. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a cool angle, and I had never really seen a sports movie kind of take it from that angle. Like, and I don't know, the way it's shot, it feels very documentary like. It feels very like homemade, like you're it's like a very voyeuristic, like the locker room, the guys are like locker room talking and like shenanigans and all this stuff. Like it pretty early on there's like a scene of this like huge party um with the players, and it's like it's supposed to be funny and fun, but it's like really cringe because there's a lot of just casual sexual assault going on.
Mhm.
Have you seen this one yet?
I haven't checked this one out yet,
Okay.
no.
So you'll know what I mean when you see it. But there's like a lot of like casual like homophobia and some different isms in there, but it's definitely like an unflinching sort of look at the sort of like business side of this sport. And apparently this is based on a it's like semi autobiographical, which makes sense because that's again that's like the style and how it's like filmed. So it does not need to be nearly 2 hours long. The pacing I think kind of ruins it a little bit for me, but again, that hook was so strong of having this sort of like inside look, and like definitely not the like glamorized kind of look that I think was like strong enough for me to sort of like still enjoy it, even though again it could be a little bit of a slog. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting discovery. This looks really nice on 4K as well. You don't get a lot of HDR. You still get that nice fine film grain look. Colors do pop really nicely, very well balanced. Skin tones look nice and natural. I sound like a broken record, but I don't really feel like I have a lot to complain about typically with like Kino Studio Classics and their 4K releases in particular. But yeah, like there was some instances where I noticed like faces looked a little blurry or didn't look as maybe well defined as they could have. I don't know how much that is just to, like how it was filmed, and like there's probably not a lot you can fix with things like that. But honestly, it wasn't like bad enough for me to really like think it like ruins the experience. It's just I'm actively looking for this kind of stuff when I'm reviewing. So if you're not really like that nitpicky, then it's not a big deal. And again, it's not a lot. I noticed maybe like one or two times when it felt like it could have been a little bit better defined, but it does not distract me. It never like took me out of the movie. So this has a nice commentary track. This has a couple featurettes, a really nice director introduction, which is cool, and rounded out by trailer. So really nice package, and the movie's interesting. If you definitely like sports movies, if you like Nick Nolte, you see him like in his underwear, almost like the very first scene. So
Mhm.
that's something for your Nick Nolte fans there. But yeah, North Dallas 40, interesting film, really nice release.
Well, considering I like sports movies pretty well, I'm excited to check that out, even with all the isms and all the other problematic things with it. My first title I was very excited about because this is quickly becoming one of my favorite lines. This is the Vinegar Syndrome sublabel cinematography's third release, Going South, on 4K Ultra HD. I covered Little Darlings and Red Rock West about a month ago, the first two releases, and this is the third one. And you have this little tab where you can pull it out, which I really love. I think that's pretty cool. And so here's the how the interior looks. It's a nice kind of like cloth book bound package, which opens up to like essays and uh, photos and all kinds of stuff within here. So that, and then you got the 4K disc and then a Blu-ray disc here. So this Going South, I had heard of it, but I had never seen it before. This is the second directorial feature from Jack Nicholson, who also stars in it. And then this is also the first film, My Dear Mary Steenburgen, who I talked about recently. I won't go on about how much I love her again, but once again, she is one of the best parts of the movie. And seeing her introduction, I think she does a really nice job in this. It's a Western tales post Civil War where Jack Nicholson plays this kind of outlaw figure who's on the run. He, through circumstances, ends up getting caught while on the run at the very beginning of the movie and brought back to this small town for justice, where he is sentenced to hang for his crimes. What he doesn't know is that the town has an ordinance where any man short of having committed murder can be spared hanging if one of the women chooses to marry them. And he does end up getting Mary Steenburgen to agree to this after a little bit of him kind of making an ass of himself in front of the town. It's in an amusing way. But whenever, so she takes on the responsibility of saving him, but you also realize she has a alternative agenda as well because she wants to exploit him for labor because she has what she believes to be a gold mine that could be exploited that she just has to get to. So becomes this kind of like unlikely pairing of this convict and this nice virginal like high society lady, like a proper lady. I won't say high society. She's a proper lady who's kind of inexperienced. And there's also kind of side plots with like eminent domain with the railroad and stuff kind of getting into the picture. But overall, I would say it's a good movie. I don't think a lot of people really love it, and I can kind of understand why. It's not like the best movie, but it's a very interesting movie, and I'm glad that I got to see it. Especially for Nicholson and Steenburgen, I love both of them a lot. Similar to North Dallas 40, there is a scene of sexual assault in this, which I was not expecting, and I was thinking that they were going to like hint at but not actually do, but then they kind of like cut away from it and it is implied that it happens, and I was just like, oh, okay, so we're doing this. So that kind of didn't hit right for me, considering like kind of what they were going for within the movie and developing this romance. But overall, I think it's a pretty funny movie. There's a lot of notable actors that we really love in supporting roles, including Christopher Lloyd's like in this of Nixon, who really wanted to marry Mary's character, but she had no interest. There's also early Danny DeVito role. There's like some other interesting people in here, and it's just a really interesting movie, even if it's like not flawless, I would say. So in terms of the audio visual and all that stuff, this comes from a new 4K scan of the original camera negative. This was never before released on Blu-ray, so this is a big upgrade from the DVD. So this has been kind of hard to find for a while. So cinematography has been really picking up some of these gems that like with Little Darlings going from DVD to 4K. This is a similar situation where probably no one really ever expected to get a 4K release, but they swooped in and did a really nice package. It looks 99% of the time, I'd say it looks fantastic. It has HDR, no Dolby Vision, but HDR, and it looks very nice. There's like a 7-second shot that I noticed that kind of looks like maybe the originals, like camera negative, might have been like not in perfect condition because it looks like it drops down to DVD quality for like I said, like 7 seconds max. But other than that, it looks like a very nice transfer, and I was very impressed. The original mono is included. It sounds very nice. And it has a new commentary track from a film historian and 2 visual essays, one of which is from Sam Deegan, that one runs about, I believe it's about 19 minutes long. And it's about the cinematographer who also shot movies like Days of Heaven. So it's a really gorgeous looking movie. There's also another 23-minute visual essay about Jack Nicholson and like kind of the different sides of him, like as a director and an actor, and kind of even talks about his retirement a little bit now and stuff. So I miss Jack Nicholson. We'll probably be talking about him in a few weeks when The Departed 4K comes out. But just going back to kind of his earlier days and just kind of spending time with him here is a really fun time, and it's a fantastic release from cinematography. So make sure if there will probably, once this is sold out, there's a limited run of 6,000 copies so far. I know that Red Rock West has already sold out, and Little Darlings is getting lower. So don't wait too long if you want this really nice packaging. This will be released in a standard edition later on down the road, but it won't be as all nice and cool as like this packaging is. But it's recommended, even if it's not my favorite Nicholson movie. It's still a very interesting movie, and I think it's worth checking out.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like I kind of remember that cover. It's like him at the gallows or something. Is that?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, no, I've always been intrigued by that one. So that sounds like a really good opportunity to check it out. So my next one, I know you saw and you covered. We talked a little bit about it, but it is the 4K of Contagion, which here's the back with some features. This does have a digital code. It's not in there now, but if you order one, you will have one. This is such a weird movie to watch after a pandemic
Mhm.
because it's so eerily like spot on. Like the scenes where they're like, this is how it's spread, and like this is how it multiplies, and there was like the one like medical person that was like, we don't want to like scare everybody, but it's like, well, you have to like inform people, and like this is what you're supposed to be doing. Jude Law is very cockney in this, like
Yeah.
more cockney than I feel like I've ever heard him, but that was cool. No, yeah, it's really very effective, I will say. Like this is Steven Soderbergh, and I think like he's definitely doing what he's known for, which is like really great dialogue, really interesting use of a soundtrack to create mood. And speaking of mood, I like how just moody this movie is. Like there's some scenes that are like very like putrid colored. There's some that are like just like blue tinted. It's like kind of like interesting how he's really playing with the his visual palette here. And yeah, it's like it's interesting. I was like, I don't normally like these kinds of movies, but I think like after like the height of COVID, it is sort of an interesting time capsule of like how kind of bang on this is. Um, Without a lot of like exaggerations. Like I thought Jude Law's character as sort of like a conspiracy blogger was fascinating, but also just as relevant today.
Yeah.
So it really is an eerie watch. Poor Gwyneth Paltrow. My partner does not like her, so you probably would like this movie. Matt Damon's good. Lawrence Fishburne is always a win, rocking a pretty sweet mustache. Yeah, it's an eerie watch. It really is. Like, it's interesting that a lot of people were watching like these kinds of movies during the pandemic as like a comfort watch. And like, I personally don't get that, but like, listen, like, if that's whatever helps you, go for it. But as I said, this is a very visually interesting movie, and I think the 4K presentation is nicely done here. Kind of like with the last 4K title, it wasn't like HDR to death, and it does pop quite a bit. It's not like an ancient movie or anything, but people tend to shot it like over saturated, which I don't really think was like too much of the case here. So it looks really nice. Everything looks kind of balanced. No real issues, really. Sounds good. The featurettes were nice. I believe these are just port overs. I don't think any of these are like new, but it's not a long watch. Honestly, it's like 106 minutes. It goes by really quickly because like the pacing's great, the dialogue's really awesome. Like Soderbergh is always really good at having like stuff that feels witty but not overwritten. Interesting movie. Pretty solid release. Would have been nice to have something sort of like recorded post pandemic, kind of talking about the film, but I'm happy with what we got. And if you have owned this previously, it's a nice upgrade. And if you haven't seen it yet, I think, check it out. It's definitely weird watching it in 2024. So
Yeah, absolutely. I already went deep into this movie previously, so I won't restate my thoughts. But yeah, it's definitely like kind of a unsettling watch, for sure. My next two titles, I'm sticking kind of in the Vinegar Syndrome family. I'm doing a couple partner label releases. My first one is from Music Box Films, and this is Signature Move, which I believe is like a 2019 film, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. But this one was actually never on my radar. It just kind of slipped by me. I'll take out the disc so you can see the. It's not reversible cover art, but you can see the artwork underneath here. But I'm glad that this kind of got a new release through this Blu-ray release, because I actually quite enjoyed it. It's not a completely groundbreaking story. It's kind of more in your typical like indie vein that once I kind of explain the narrative, you'll kind of understand. But it involves a Pakistani American woman whose mother, who's like a very traditional woman, has recently she's was widowed in recent years and she's begun living with her daughter. She stays at home and just watches TV all the time, like soap operas and all kinds of stuff, while her daughter, who is like a lawyer, is just out in the community. She is a queer woman who is hiding this from her mom. And she is also recently taking up learning to wrestle. She kind of through like a barter system. She helps someone that couldn't afford to pay, but she's like, "I'll teach you some wrestling moves." She's like, "Okay, cool." She ends up meeting this Mexican American woman, and they kind of have like a quick fling, and but then it slowly starts to come in like to or develop into something. She owns a bookshop, and it's just like a low key like a queer comedy romance drama with a little bit of like the bookshop owner. She is a more out person, and her family like she has a good relationship with her family. Her mom is actually a former luchador wrestler, so there's like a connection there between the two. It's just kind of this balancing between this burgeoning romance where neither of them are sure if they are ready for a relationship or on the same place where they are at. And then there's the home life of the main woman and how these two intersect. It's kind of predictable knowing this genre, but it's heartfelt, it's sweet, and I think the romance is pretty well done. It's kind of even keeled, but like you can feel a connection between the two. It's a really like lovely romance. It's just a like kind of a sweet, gentle movie that's not, like I said, not super boundary pushing. It's just like a unique point of view within this genre, and so it's like it's nice to have kind of these like LGBTQ like friendly movies that like you get these perspectives that like you get like dozens of these movies from normal cis white perspective all the time, but it's just to have like this nice dramedy. It's good. So this actually comes from I think someone you'll recognize. This is from director Jennifer Reeder, who has in recent years like contributed a lot of horror movies and been part of the VHS franchise. So this was actually her directorial debut, which got her like out of like from the more of the visual arts into directing, and she does a really nice job with this. And she actually, her along with the main star, they both do an audio commentary track. And there's also an additional interview with her and the star, and then another the second star as well. It gets all of these individual interviews. There's also an additional audio interview with the woman who plays the mom, who is like a legendary Indian actress. So it's interesting to hear from her. You also get a very, very, very brief short. It's like a minute long short that ties into this movie. That's like was made for like the Chicago like film festival or something like that. And then you also get like a couple trailers and stuff. But overall, signature move. It's not groundbreaking, but if the story interests you and it's like an 80-minute dramedy, and it's good. I liked it. And also with this and my next title, if you want this like an exclusive slipcover, you can go to the Vinegar Syndrome / OCN distribution website. There's an option to buy like a really, really nice slipcover for like a small upcharge that you can get there, and specific like indie retailers like Orbit, Diabolic, Grindhouse. So yeah, if you are a slipcover collector, that you can do that. But either way, signature move is worth checking out. And yeah, I recommend it.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really good. I've heard of that one. I definitely want to check that out. So I'm glad that, got your recommendation. So that's like even more incentive. So my next title that I'm talking about is The Act, which is a limited series about Gypsy Lee Blanchard and
Gypsy Rose.
Rose, yeah. Um,
I was very into this limited series when it was first airing on Hulu. My wife and I
yeah.
like binged it.
Oh, this was our weekly watch, and it was
Yeah.
fun rewatching it because, well, I'll get into it later. But here is the inside,
Mhm.
and yeah. So this is an interesting series. When my husband and I were first watching it, we kind of were like, as much as we like love Patricia Arquette, like her New Orleans accent is interesting, and
Mhm.
it's not that I think she is bad in this, because I don't think she is. It's just it's a swing. Um, and then rewatching it for this, I feel like I've kind of like, once you settle into the accent and you kind of just get into it, it's not really that bad. Um, and she did win an Emmy for this, which I thought was cool and kind of hilarious because, again, we thought it was kind of hokey and funny. Um, but yeah, this is a really disturbing um, limited series. It's not like super graphic, although it is a little bit when you see like what happens to the mom. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's like told in a really interesting way because it sort of does um, go a little bit forwards and backwards in time as it's sort of laying out the central sort of story going back to, I think it was like 2008, 2009. No, I think both actresses are amazing. They are amazing together. I think, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on who plays Gypsy Rose, but Joey King. She's really excellent in this. I feel like give her all the awards. If you're like really familiar with the case, I still feel like this is an interesting watch. Of course, they do take dramatic license with things, but I think they get the beats all really correct. If you haven't seen the excellent HBO documentary that really kind of kickstarted this off, you should check that out. And it's also interesting timing since like the real Gypsy Rose is now out of prison, and apparently like has a husband and is thriving. So I'm not going to get into whole ethics on that, but like, yeah, yeah, I don't know. Again, I kind of wish there would have been like a commentary track or at least like some interviews or like something to sort of give a little bit more context and like subtext to the story, but also like what the actors thought of like portraying these real people. Um, but yeah, I'm just happy that we got a Blu-ray from Universal. Looks really nice too. It's definitely a newer show, so it's gonna look probably it's gonna like looks definitely like better than streaming. So I was actually kind of surprised it didn't just get dumped out on DVD. So good on you, Universal. Could still use some more like stuff. Um, I don't know. I just feel like if you're gonna compete with just streaming a show and you want people to buy it, you should give them a little something. But um, it's good as is. Great series. It's like definitely heartbreaking. I mean, Joey King, like just how she can sway between this persona her mother wants her to be and her trying to find her budding womanhood and then all this other like craziness is just like balancing that is probably very difficult. So it's a good watch. It's just it's a lot. You want a palate cleanser afterwards.
Yeah, that was one. I still think it's one of the better like true crime inspired dramatic series that we've gotten. I think it's pretty well done. I did not have it getting a Blu-ray release on my bingo card, so that was a interesting development, but I'm all for it. So keep on any of these streaming only series, like yeah. And as ghoulish as it sounds, like I firmly believe that if Gypsy hadn't gotten out of prison last year, I don't think we would have gotten this Blu-ray release, which is ghoulish to say, but that's how executives' minds work. I think like, oh, she's in the news, we can get this on Blu-ray. It's wild, but that's just a tangent. I will I will move along to my next title, which as soon as I heard, I don't know how this escaped my view whenever it was originally released. But as soon as I heard this material, I was like, this is 100% my shit, and I'm very excited about it. This is from ETR Media, and this is The United States of Insanity, which is a documentary about the Insane Clown Posse. Which specifically it is about the Insane Clown Posse and kind of exploring all about them, but is specifically about how the FBI labeled them as a gang due to like their lyrics and how some of their the people who like some of their fans acted. They got labeled a gang, and how this is kind of infringing upon like free speech and how it's caused a lot of problems for them and their fans. And I found that to be fascinating. That while yes, I do love a good just like spotlight documentary on a subject I love, it can get a little bit tiring at times, just if you don't really learn anything specifically new. But I thought that this was an interesting angle coming at it from the free speech angle because I would say I am not a fan of ICP, but I don't want to deride them like I think a lot of people, because like they call themselves like the self-proclaimed like most hated band in the world, just because if people kind of see that you're an ICP fan, they kind of think of you differently a little bit, whether you deserve it or not. Usually not, because it's just music, so everyone has what they like or they can relate to. And a lot of this first part of the documentary especially is delving into how the band was like developed whenever the two is Shaggy Two Dope, and I can't remember his other uh, but the both of them, like, they're from their childhood origins up until like kind of they exploded in popularity and gained this whole fandom, and you get to like explore some of the lore, which I know all the family, which is what they call their fans, like the family, they all know about like Fago and all this stuff and all their crazy shows or stuff that goes on at shows. So you get that aspect of the documentary. You get learning about who they are, why there's an appeal to them and stuff, and how they are a little bit misunderstood. And there is a lot that is misunderstood because there are some supremely violent lyrics like rapped like along with these songs. But the community, the family, they preach about love. They're like all about helping each other. They like hold fundraisers for the underprivileged. They do a lot of stuff to help each other, like at concerts. And despite everyone getting like sticky from Fago and like people doing weird shit, they mostly are pretty respectful of one another, save for like some bad apples here and there. But like most of it is just like really like a thoughtful crowd, even though they might look like freaks, weirdos, all this stuff. It's like a like sexually free, like you can be yourself, all kinds of atmosphere, which scares the authority. And that's kind of like gets into some of the free speech stuff, because there are some of their fans that, while like maybe like wearing some of their attire or like posting about their lyrics and stuff, they committed some very heinous crimes. And this documentary doesn't shy away from that. Like, you do get into talking to some of the police officers, like stumbling upon some scenes where they're like, this is one of the most gruesome crime scenes I've ever seen in my life and stuff. And it kind of like, yes, there were some people who listened to ICP or even like hung like paraphernalia, like necklaces, like rocking their Hatchet Man symbol or something on the crime scene. But that doesn't mean that they are necessarily a gang. And then being classified as a gang has like really fucked over some good people that are just trying to live their lives and listen to music that they don't want to be judged. And this kind of gets into like a court case that they get into against the FBI, which is really interesting. But and you can kind of Google how this all turns out. But just watching this, learning about the band, learning about the legal side of things, hearing from the fans, it's a very illuminating documentary. And like I said, even as I'm not a fan of the band, but I'm a fan of really interesting documentaries, and I think this does a really nice job of like not just propping up the band. It's not even from a Insane Clown Posse fan. The director who's in the commentary track says like he was aware of them, but he had never listened to them before making this documentary. So it's a pretty even-handed account where no one is giving like the majority of like the share, but you do get a lot of really great interviews from the band. They are participating throughout over many years. You get to see even some visual transformations from like their earliest interviews to like where they are more to like where the film was released. But it's a very informative documentary and very entertaining music / social issue documentary. And this is a really good Blu-ray. It's a newer movie. I believe it came out in like 2020, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. Nice HD transfer, 5.1 sound, and with some of these tunes, like they hit in 5.1. And then you also get the commentary track I talked about, a ton of deleted scenes. There's like 64 minutes of unused material that you can like go through. The only thing I do not like is whenever I had this isn't going to be for everyone because no one else has to review it, but whenever I hit the play all, I'm used to I can just hit like the info button and see how many minutes there are. But I had to go through like scene by scene and like add up the minutes to figure out how many there was for the review. So that was kind of annoying, but no one else has to deal with that. There's also a 16-minute video of concert footage, so you can get a feel of what it's like to be in an ICP show. And there's like some trailers and stuff. But overall, pretty solid movie and solid release for the movie. If you want that slipcover, like I was talking about with the last release, you can go to the Vinegar Syndrome / OCN distribution website, or you can go to select independent retailers, like I mentioned before. But if you want a slipcover, you can, or the standard edition is also pretty good with reversible cover art. So if this sounds interesting to you in the slightest, even if you're not a fan of the band, it's worth checking out.
I'm shocked you're not an ICP.
Not quite my bag. Not quite my bag. I'm not opposed to violent lyrics by any means, but it's just not my musical style.
Like I picture when no one's around, you wear like the makeup.
Yeah.
Um, so um, I like last week have another film noir box set. Um, and this was an interesting one. So my last one was a all Edward G. Robinson one. Sadly, that is not the case here, but there's some interesting stuff, especially when you have something called Finger Man. Um, you had to know that that was kind of a double entendre back then. I don't know.
We don't know what you're talking about.
Right. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. Right off the bat, all of these have commentary tracks from different film historians, which is awesome. That was the case with the last box set. And City of Shadows is the first film that I watched, and it's a really interesting mob film where like you have this guy that's like really good at law, and it's like the shocking thing is he's using that to help gangsters, and like how wild of a premise that is. And I'm like, is that even like that? It would not be a pitch meeting that anybody would take. It's just that's so common. Not saying that like
Yeah.
all lawyers are like that, but like there definitely are lawyers that try to get their clients off that might be into stuff. Um but I don't know. I thought it was
That's
interesting.
their job.
Right. But I don't know. It's just like I think it's kind of funny how that angle is taken. And I think it's interesting like seeing how like much of a novel idea that was back in 1955.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's interesting. It's surprisingly well shot, well acted. I like the guy that plays like the heavy in this. He's very charismatic. Some decent twists, but I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything, but you do kind of see where this is going. And if you know anything about the Hays Code, you kind of know that like every bad guy is going to get his comeuppance. I don't know. That's why I always feel like pre-code films are a little bit more like excited because I don't know really what's going to happen as far as like any sort of comeuppance or anything. Crash Out is the next film, and this is one that I think has a lot of potential. Let me just show this off again. So it starts with this really cool like breakout. These men are like hiding out from the police, and they're like, well, we have to be here for like 3 days without like water, without food, but you know, we're gonna like wait out the police and we're gonna escape and all this stuff. And so you're like, okay, so this is gonna be like one of those like claustrophobic single setting sort of things. But then they end up escaping a little bit earlier than they thought, and then it goes to another sort of scenario where you think like, okay, this is home base. This is what they're setting up, and then it switches again, and then like it's like a home invasion thing where they're like hiding out with this family. And I always it's never a good sign when like you introduce new characters. I think like an hour into this movie. I mean, there is some like pretty disturbing scenes. There's a scene where I don't think this is a spoiler because you don't. I'm not saying who, but someone is like set on fire, like no CGI. It's just they like literally just set this stuntman ablaze. Obviously, there's techniques to make that not kill the guy, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
still like kind of harrowing to see. And like, there are some like very disturbing kind of aspects. There's like a priest that gets really creepy and rapey, and like, no one wants that. So it's interesting. It's just it always feels like it's starting and stopping. Like it never really finds its kind of footing, which I think is unfortunate. Next one is Finger Man. And I'm sorry, I'm a child. I cannot not laugh at that title. But yeah, this is another one that's just sort of like it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Edward G. Robinson movie that I covered last week, where it's sort of like a day in the life. This one feels a little bit more like that, only it's sort of like a wrong man thing, and it feels very much like it's trying to do like a Hitchcock thing. And I don't know, there's some interesting elements. This one is another sort of like gangster movie, which I guess like all of these are sort of gang. I mean, I guess Crash Out's not necessarily like mobster, but I don't know. It's just it's a very like cat and mouse game against like the like informant and these like the heavies. It's kind of just by the numbers, and there's definitely times when I'm like, okay, you know, who is this character because they're not very interesting or well developed. But I don't know. There is some like interesting angles. I don't want to spoil anything because it does have a few like tricks up its sleeve. I just think it's a little by the numbers. All three of these films are like interesting. I think if I had to pick the one I like the most, I would say maybe like City of Shadows had the more consistent and interesting plot and interesting characters. So these two have new HD transfers. They look really good. They do have a little bit of like damage, a little bit of like artifacts and stuff, but overall, really cleaned up, really nice looking. Even like Fingerman, that wasn't like that wasn't newly restored. Still looks really solid. And again, I love the commentary tracks. They really do add a nice bit of context to the films. And yeah, this is a nice set. Keep them coming because it's so funny. I think like how old is this series? Maybe 3, 4 years old, if that.
Yeah. Yeah, the first volume, the gap between the first and second volume was pretty lengthy, but once they hit the second volume, they just kind of kept going. And I think that's been since like 2019, 2020 is when it really started like blossoming. But yeah, it's just gonna be like soon all of this will just be dark side of cinema.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Bring it on.
Yeah, absolutely. My next title is from Sony, their Sony Pictures Classics line. This is Shadow Magic, which is a really cool one for cinephiles because it's really about kind of the magic of movies in a really real way. So this takes place in the early 1900s in Peking, China, and it is about this Englishman who he brings over the like first like projected movie basically, and is like introducing this society to film, the concept of film, moving image and stuff. And our main character, he is already an individual who is um, really interested in like the sound and stuff and like new technologies where everyone else is pretty much more traditional. Like the most technologically advanced they want to get is just like a photograph and stuff. But our main character, he's really interested in all this stuff. And so whenever he gets introduced to this concept through this Western lens, his mind is blown. And you kind of see that initial time where he sees a moving image where he's like, trying to figure out how it works. He's like losing his damn mind. He's like looking like behind the like screen to make sure like nothing is behind there, manipulating stuff because it's just such a foreign concept to just like have a moving it. Like we take movies for granted so much, but it's just to see this sense of discovery within this society is really cool. I should note, while most of these actors will be pretty unfamiliar to Western audiences, the Englishman is played by Jared Harris, who people might know from like Chernobyl. But he does a really nice job in this. But this is a tale of a society that's kind of like stuck in their kind of classic beliefs, like they appreciate like the like live stage and theater and everything, clashing a little bit against the burgeoning technology of movies and how this intermingles with their own like their own personal lives and everything. But this almost has like a cinema paradiso type of effect at some points where you see how this community, like different people in the community, like giving in and looking like at first they're like have no interest or even a little bit afraid of this, but once they get into seeing these movies, you see how much it enriches their lives and stuff, and like how happy it makes them, and for different reasons, and just like seeing simple things. Like it's not like a full narrative movie all the time. Usually, it's just like small things, like some people like what like Americans like doing a snowball fight, or like just like a baby laughing or something. Just kind of simple imagery like this that's just still so it's mind blowing to them and so transportive. And they're like, you see them talking after the screenings sometimes of just like, oh, I've only seen what I always thought like Westerners were just soldiers because that's all we've seen them as. And like, oh, they might actually have emotions and a soul, basically. Like it's giving them this avenue to see the world in a different light. And I think that's very beautiful how it's like kind of you can extrapolate the power of movies like today, which we watch so many. Like I think we even take it for granted how amazing this concept is. I think this movie really boils down how interesting that is, and I think it's a really rewarding movie in that sense because it just kind of like makes you stop and just remember how amazing movies are. And I just really had a really good time watching this because it just like emboldened me. I'm just like, oh, this is like movies are great. Like we watch so many, but they're really great and they're magical pieces like of art, and I really love it. And this is a really nice movie. And this is a really nice Blu-ray. I am used to Sony not revealing some of their catalog, like the provinces of some of their catalogs of like how they were restored or anything. But at the very end, you do get some restoration notes for this one, which I was very appreciative. I think that was really cool. This has been restored by Indie Collect. They said they did this was done on a 5K workflow process. So I would assume that means a 5K scan of the original 35 millimeter original camera negative, along with a duplicate negative, I guess, for any segments that may have been a little bit more damaged. And it looks very nice. It's a really nice, rich transfer. It's like filmic, has the film grain and everything, rich colors, no major source deficiencies. Like even with the duplicate negative, I didn't see like notable variations between the two sources. It looks very nice. It's a seamless process. 5.1 sound. This is mostly, I believe it's in Mandarin, but yes, it's Mandarin with some words in English, like from the Jared Harris character, and a little bit with him trying to communicate with our main character. But usually it's in Mandarin and subtitled. There's an audio commentary track from the director, which is she talks at length about how this was a very unique co-production, and like having like the Chinese crew and like a more American crew, and how this kind of they all kind of work together and stuff is really interesting to hear her talk about that. Other than that, there's just a trailer, but overall, this was an excellent discovery. So Shadow Magic, if you haven't seen it yet, it's definitely worth checking out. I believe it came out in like 2000. I had never heard of it before, but once again, that's why I love physical media, because sometimes these things just get newly released, and it's some really great discoveries.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And yeah, it is really interesting because I do think we do take a lot of that stuff for granted. So that's kind of interesting to see what that's like through maybe like a less jaded point of view. Speaking of jaded,
Uh-oh.
so I'm this is part one of two of the they are 10 animated features from Hanna-Barbera, the Superstars 10 collection.
Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. Don't shit all over this.
No, I'm not. Listen, I'm not gonna. It's a really nice set. I like these movies.
Mhm.
Like, I think if I had to just talk about them all sort of like as a group,
Mhm.
they all feel like 45, 50-minute shorts that are stretched out to feature film length. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yeah, they're a little bit too long at times, but I don't begrudge them that. Okay, let them cook.
Yeah, but it's not like stuff that like I think Yogi, like the first Yogi movie, is sort of the one I hated the most because it has like the baby characters that are so obnoxious. Although like the one having the really deep voice was perfect. That was awesome. Um, but yeah, it just it feels like okay, they have a goal. There's a side plot, and then that kind of leads them back to the main plot. And there's a side plot, and then it just wraps up the end. And it's like rinse repeat. Like I don't know. Like it's so funny because I remember really liking the Jetsons meets the Flintstones, and now I'm like I liked it as a kid, and now I'm like, did I just like the concept more than I did like the actual thing because it's a slog. There's so much going on, like nothing really makes sense, and everything gets you know it's like status quo at the end. Listen, I'm not saying they need to be masterpieces. They're fun, they're colorful. The presentation is really nice. All of these have a really beautiful hand drawn. Like the backgrounds always look kind of painted, which I love. I think if I had to pick my favorite, it's like the Scooby Doo one. It suffers from that same thing though. It's like it's interesting. It goes to like the A plot, and then there's a side plot, and then there's like something else to divert them. And yeah, I know what it is. Y'all are just trying to stretch this out instead of just streamlining it. I mean, it could be like a normal Scooby Doo length episode, and it would be perfect. So that's all I'm saying. Hopefully, my next set will fare a little bit better. But when I sat down to do these, I was like, okay, they're going to be like 50 minutes tops, each one of them. Nope, they are all like some are over 90 minutes, which is wild. Like some of my all-time favorite movies clock in at under 90 minutes. But let me just show you the inside. These are how these are housed. They're all individually disked, which is nice. Also, speaking of, if you want these individually and you don't want this like big 10 movie set, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but if there's a few titles that you don't have and you want on Blu-ray, they do have all of these individually. Um, so I like that option. I am reluctantly excited to start the second volume and finish it out next week. But yeah, I don't know. I remember liking these more as a kid, but now I'm like, who has the attention span for this?
Right here, I'm seated. Okay, I
Okay,
really
well,
I really liked the Spruce Goose one just because I really like discovering my new love of Snagglepuss because he's a real freak and I love it. I love what he's selling, so I love Snagglepuss.
oh, that is the one thing that's kind of fun about these is like they'll randomly cross over to
Mhm.
other like the first my god, I almost said Winnie the Pooh because I just saw that the new Winnie the
Yeah.
Pooh movie. Yogi the Bear movie. You know, like Quick
Yeah.
Draw. The yeah.
Yeah.
He showed up and again kind of dicked around, and then there was like I don't know, a third act doppelganger plot that this is a mess.
I worry for you because I think the second half of the set is actually a little like not as good.
Oh
So,
wow. Okay. All right.
and also you have two movies that aren't it wasn't done in the same animation workflow. They were more done digitally and they're up
Mm,
converted, so it looks a little bit rougher.
okay.
But I'll let you dig into that. I also have a standalone video where I dig heavily into this, my Warner Archive video. So if you want to see a more positive spin on these movies, you can watch my solo video. Uh, anyway, I was just talking about the early movie making process with shadow magic. So I decided to complement that with some actual early movies. This is from our friends at Undercrank Productions, and this is Accidentally Preserved Volume 5. which they kind of explain on the back that how a lot of these early silent films, they were rented out through libraries on like actual like prints, like 16 millimeter prints. And while a lot of the original materials no longer exist, a lot of these library copies are have been like accidentally preserved and are some of the best copies that are remaining of these old films. So that's what you get here. You get an assortment of movies that have been preserved through the Library of Congress, through some of these uh, prints that survive, these 16 millimeter prints. So you get 4 silent films that are include, what do we got here? Lorraine of the Lions. And I'll note the runtimes of these because they can vary a little bit, especially at this era. This is a 76-minute film. There's an 18-minute film called Love at First Flight. That's the first disc, and the next disc has 2 movies. Hoofbeats of Vengeance, which is 47 minutes long, and then the fourth commandment, which is 66 minutes long. The earliest is 1925, and then it goes to 1928. So this is a very interesting collection. I think it's really cool that these were preserved. Lorraine of the Lions is almost like a take on Tarzan, but from like with a woman Tarzan, where it's a girl who has grown up kind of amongst the circus, and she has while going across on like this boat, she ends up losing her parents, and she like ends up getting stranded and raised like amongst the lions and stuff. And like, so it's just kind of like that classic structure, and it's an adventure film. It's fun, and it has some dated special effects, but some quaint special effects. And it's not quite as visceral as Tarzan the Ape Man from Warner Archive from a few months ago, but it's a pretty cool early silent film, and it's interesting. Love at First Flight is more of like a short 18-minute romance vehicle involving airplanes and rescues and all this stuff. It's pretty cool. Hoofbeats of Vengeance is very interesting. It's about a horse who loses his owner and goes out for vengeance. It's awesome. I love that. So if you want to see a horse like getting vengeance for his owner, if you want to reverse John Wick, Hoofbeats of Vengeance, that's your story. And the fourth commandment, it's more of just like more of a straightforward like period melodrama, but it's also pretty solid. Overall, these are pretty entertaining films altogether. They've all been preserved by Library of Congress and been given new 2K scans and new scores from John C. Marsalis. For anyone who collect silent films on any regular basis, you know that the quality is never like pristine, but usually you're just hoping it's as good as can be. And that's where we're at here. Like, these look really great for a film, like for silent films from the 20s. Like, they look really good. Some of these are color tinted, some are black and white, but overall they all look nice. They all look good. And there's no unexpected problems like compression artifacts or unexpected damage for this time. So overall, these have been preserved pretty well. And you get Dolby Digital 2.0 audio, so no DTS. I usually give a little bit more leeway since the score is the only thing that you're hearing. And it's not like a major variation from like a lossless source. I would love if it was lossless, but it's not a deal breaker. No special features, just 4 previously thought to be lost features to varying lengths that are now on Blu-ray looking as good as I possibly can. So accidentally preserved volume 5. This is a really cool collection. I have never seen any of the previous collections, which I think may have been DVD only. I'm not sure. But if you're a fan of silent films, definitely check out whatever Undercrank Productions is putting out. But this is a really nice release, and I highly recommend it for silent film fans.
Nice. So my from here on out, it's going to be animation. My next title is the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 3, which I've talked about the other ones that are really pretty excellent. And yeah, I love this set. It is, what is it? It's 25 shorts. Includes the first color short film Honeymoon Hotel, which is really cool. It's a nice mixture of sort of like wartime cartoons. You get like a little bit of like Wile E. Coyote, a little bit of Bugs, a little bit of Daffy, a little bit of everything. They do a really nice job. I also like how in like previous collections, they will let you know that some of this is dated, and they're not celebrating that obviously, but they're also not burying it as well. Like I think just it feels like lose lose, but I think the best what they're doing is just putting it in its context for its time. So I do like how we're not necessarily ignoring some of these more problematic shorts. I mean, there's not a lot of that, obviously, and it's kind of like the same thing with like the Superman cartoons. There definitely was a couple like really sort of like cringe episodes, but they didn't hide those away. I think we need to just look at it and learn from it, do better. But with that out of the way, it's still a really fun set. They have a play all feature, which is nice. You can just kick back, watch this. This is the inside of the disc. Like this, I mean, I can't say whether or not I like this more than the other sets, but I do really love how we're getting more of these, looking great. Again, like the other collections, I think like the preservation on the animation is like beautiful. Everything has that wonderful art style, the hand drawn, the things that look kind of like I was saying with the other set looks very paintery. It looks like um I don't know, I just love that style. And I think you can replicate that really nicely today, but like just to know that like how painstaking that stuff was to like animate and sync and get everything right. It's like mind boggling. This is a really nice celebration of that. I really like the shorts that they curated here. I wish there was like features and stuff. I wish that there was more like I like the overall. I like the you're there for the tunes, but it would be nice just to have a little bit more like bang for your buck. But yeah, I'm appreciative that we're getting more of these on Blu-ray. Warner Brothers has been kind of interesting on what they're doing with their animation, especially like their older stuff. It's nice to see that we're at least getting more like physical media from them.
Absolutely. I want as many of those volumes as it takes to get all of all of them out. So
Yeah.
I will keep supporting them however I can. I love the Looney Tunes. Even whenever they're not as good, they're still good. So I quite enjoy them. I'm sticking the world of animation, but I'm going over to Japan. I'm doing an anime series from Sentai. This is Insomniacs After School. This is one I had not heard of previously, but whenever it popped up, I was like, "Oh, this sounds up my alley." So you got disc one, disc two over here. 13 episode series. I believe it's all that it's going to be. This is a romance-based series. It takes place in a school, and it's kind of set following in the wake of like some years prior of a tragedy that happened like at this astronomy tower that has caused it to be kind of closed off and like kind of abandoned, which has made it the perfect place for one of the students to kind of like sneak away whenever she needs like a quiet moment. And she has insomnia, which also this other student suffers from, and he kind of stumbles across her kind of personal this oasis away from everyone one night, and it kind of jump starts this interesting relationship dynamic where it's not like grand and supernatural and everything. It's just kind of a series where it's two people getting to know each other, and it's a lot of dialogue based, and just like while there are moments outside of just the astronomy tower and like them potentially trying to get this astronomy club established again, it is a lot of them just like their relationship dynamics and learning about each other and like being respectful of one another and learning about their past. And just it's a really straightforward low key romance where it doesn't overdo like the falling in love process. It's not like super heightened emotions because they each have kind of their own personal baggage that they're bringing to this. And but it's like it seems like a semi-realistic depiction of like a relationship that would develop between teenagers, just not into like the most extreme effect. And then also, as a bonus, the friends that are around them and stuff that they do have, they are not like super ridiculous and creating a ton of unnecessary drama, which sometimes happens in series like these. Anytime there is kind of like where you're like think that that might happen, it is like for a purpose and it kind of subverts your expectations. So quite a fan of this series, and is a nice discovery. I like more romance based animes. There's one especially that I liked with that I watched with my wife a few years ago called Kami-sama Kiss, which was a really good one. But Insomniacs After School, it's a good release from Sentai. It's a good discovery. These 13 episodes all look very nice in the original Japanese with English subtitles. No special features outside of being able to watch the opening and closing credits clean without like any of the credits and stuff. You can just look at the animation without all the text over it and stuff. So other than that, no real special features. It's just a really solid presentation for this anime that is very charming and nice, and just it'll make you feel good if you like that type of anime. And I do like it.
Yeah, my final title is also animation, and I think kind of like with the act, I think like the timing on this is really excellent. Since Afterlife, Afterlife is still out, or not, Frozen Empire. We have the Extreme Ghostbusters, which ran only one season in 1997, 40 episodes though, and yeah, so this was really fun because I remember liking this when it was like new.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just forgot how kind of like ahead of the time this was a little bit.
Mhm.
So this series follows or kind of more or less picks up after the real Ghostbusters, which was like the beloved series from like the 80s. So you do get like college professor Egon, who is basically kind of like passing the torch to like the new Ghostbusters. There's a really great finale where the OG Ghostbusters come back, which is like probably everybody's favorite episode of the series. But yeah, the cast is very diverse. I love how they have like a person in a wheelchair, they have like people of color, they have like very diverse. I love how this is definitely a much darker take on the Ghostbusters. And I don't know, I kind of think like out of all of the like not strictly canon Ghostbuster stuff, this might be like among my favorite. And like you can't like not love Billy West as Slimer, which also like leads to like really good like voice acting overall. And yeah, it's kind of a shame that this didn't go on longer. I like how you can kind of watch any episode out of order, but there is sort of some really nice ongoing storylines. This was previously released in like volumes, 1 through 3, but now it's like nicely collected. I will show you the inside how they do this. So we get this kind of I said this before, just be really careful. These like things like tend to break. But this is how they're are laid out. And like nothing like inside here, like graphics wise. This is kind of just very like bare bones, streamlined, no special features, unfortunately, which I think that would have been really fun. A little retrospective, some interviews, just something, gosh, even some like retro like commercials for this show would have been really fun. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just glad that it's collected here. If you haven't really like seen this, now you can just own the whole series. Or I mean, if you have the volumes, there's nothing new. Unfortunately, it's still DVD. It's not Blu-ray. It looks fine. I mean, it's definitely a little bit of a dated master, and I'm assuming probably a really good assumption it says the same presentation as like the individual volumes, which is kind of weird because I mean, again, it was like 3 volumes split up to like 40 episodes, but which was kind of annoying. But now you can own the whole thing, and yeah, I would love to see like a nicer Blu-ray release, but it's probably not gonna.
I was just eyeballing my real Ghostbusters set that I got over here like many years ago, like over 15 years ago. I think it was from like Time Life, maybe.
Hmm.
But I kind of forgot that this version existed. So I guess it's time to add that to my collection to go along with the real Ghostbusters, just so I can be my completest self and get all
Yeah.
of it and just like kind of see how like the differences between the series and stuff, because I love the real Ghostbusters. It's a really fun show, and
Yeah.
I would love to see both of these on Blu-ray. But I'm glad that I have that now. Now I really want this. So you did a good job of like pitching it. So good for you.
Yeah. It's so painfully 90s. I love it. It's so 90s edgy. The Ghostbusters theme gets a 90s makeover. Like it's so good.
I'm all for it. I'm all about it. My final title is one. I wanted to say this title. It seemed more like a bigger one for me to end on. It's not like a big movie, but I think it's a pretty interesting movie. And the title, especially, I think is probably the biggest part of this movie. But it is the RLJ Entertainment 4K Steelbook release of The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. Which so you get this removable card, and you kind of get this landscape on the back. This is a Walmart exclusive at the moment. This is how the discs are presented. I will take out the disc so you can see the full artwork. This was released on just Blu-ray back in like 2019, I believe. I did not have that release previously, but the Blu-ray release does seem to be the exact same. So this is the first time that it is hitting 4K domestically. I believe there's a 4K release overseas, but I do not own that one. But RLJE has been doing these kind of stealth 4K upgrades at Walmart. They just did one for the 2023 Children of the Corn release, which I covered on Blu-ray last year. They just upgraded that to 4K. That one has HDR. This does not. It's just 4K standard dynamic range. But before I get into that, I'll just say the movie itself, The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot, it stars Sam Elliott. And if you have no idea what this movie is about, the title tells you, but it kind of sets up an expectation that I think could be disappointing. So I do want to kind of spell out a little bit more without spoiling anything what this film actually is. It is not really an exploitation film. It's not like there is a Bigfoot that is fought. It delivers on that front, but what this mostly is Sam Elliott as an older man dealing with his choices in life, and the like getting older, and just kind of like his regrets and stuff. And this isn't a spoiler. You do learn he killed Hitler back in the day, and like, but he was more than that. That's more of like a minor point early in the story. A lot of this is just like him dealing with having taken a life, dealing with like having flashbacks to like having a romance when he was younger, and like where his life has ended up to where he is now and how he got there. And then being called upon like from like this government agency, knowing like some of his background, to come in and like kind of come full circle and kill this like mythical creature for like reasons that kind of tie into almost the pandemic and stuff. But for the majority of this film, it is like Sam Elliott reckoning with life and aging and reflecting on it. And I think it's oddly beautiful for a movie with this title. And it does give Sam Elliott a really like juicy role where like he's allowed to be a badass. And they say in the commentary track that he was doing a lot of the stunts. Like even when they were like, we don't think you should do that, he's like, no, I'm gonna do it. But he really embodies this role very well, and you do believe him as like kind of this world weary guy who has lived a hell of a life that no one really knows about, because he's kind of like all this has kind of been kept secret, and he has the weight of the world on him. And this strangely is reminiscent of another movie I recently watched again called A Man Called Otto. with Tom Hanks, where he's like a man reflecting back on his life. There's a lot of that in this movie, but with Hitler and Bigfoot. So I found it to be a little bit more effective than A Man Called Otto. But I don't want people to be disappointed if they just expect like an all-out action film of like machine guns mowing down Hitler and like stuff. Like you do get some of that, but it is like majority of the movie is a character study. So I want to be clear. This also has Ron Livingston from Office Space, Aidan Turner, Larry Miller, who's like been in tons of things, including 10 Things I Hate About You. But he gives a really, really solid performance, like in a more straightforward role. You're used to him more in like a comedic role, but Larry Miller, he does a really good job in this as Sam Elliott's brother. Surprisingly poignant, dramatic movie from a movie called The Man Who Killed Hitler and then The Bigfoot. This 4K presentation, like I said, is standard dynamic range, but you do get like a little bit, based on my little bit of comparison with the included Blu-ray, you do get a bit firmer like blacks, like in terms of like it's a little bit firmer encode, like with the compression and stuff. You don't get compression artifacts and or anything like that. It's just a really solid, detailed, but not like night and day detail difference, but a more detailed full 4K presentation just in standard dynamic range. So it looks very nice. I think it's about as good as this film can look without HDR, which I think I heard that the overseas release might have had HDR. I don't know, but if you don't want to import, this is a really nice release. That really nice steelbook. You can get it at Walmart. You do get an audio commentary track from the director. It's very informative. I think it's a really interesting commentary track that I would check out if you're a fan. You also get a 39-minute making of featurette, a 6-minute interview with the composer, and then you get a 10-minute assortment of deleted scenes, and then like a 6 or 7-minute short film from the director, which is in black and white and is done through puppetry. So I think it's a cool short film. So The Man Who Killed Hitler and then The Bigfoot 4K steelbook. I recommend it. Definitely check out the movie. It surprised me, and I think it's a really cool find if you know what you're getting into and just don't expect total insanity.
Yeah, I know. I've definitely like heard that for a while now, so I still haven't seen it. I definitely should. It might just be like if it's streaming somewhere, I might check it out. Maybe like a try before you buy kind of thing. But that's a nice place to end. And as always, if you like this video, please consider giving this a like, subscribe, comment below. Let us know like what we cover that you really enjoyed. We haven't done a giveaway in a while, but maybe we'll try to get something going here shortly. But yeah, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button too, because we do these every week. There's other great content on the channel, and as always, thank you for hanging out with us.